Well, let's just start from the very beginning. Tell us what's happening today.
So today, the university released the findings from the forensic examination for Capitol Public Radio. As you know, and I think the community is well aware, Capitol Public Radio has had some challenges. There was a review and an audit that was conducted by the California State University system that I got and received within a couple months of coming in as president, that had been commissioned by President Nelson, and it had found that Capitol Public Radio had lax controls, lack of financial oversight, monies that were being reported in ways that didn't make sense. We found out that they had reported having a $3 million reserve, and at that point in time had only around $80,000. We knew that there was a difficult relationship with the endowment board that's separate from our endowment board. So there was a lot that was highlighted within the audit. And now what we did is then we commissioned a third-party forensic review to look deeper at where we knew there was smoke. And we knew that there was smoke around some of the conflicts of interest with board members and around the leadership. And we found that it wasn't just smoke, it was fire.
So tell me what that means. What has this exam uncovered?
Well, the exam has uncovered, I think, two main things. One is that the former GM was benefiting financially from their relationship with Capitol Public Radio in a way that I would say violates the trust of the public, violates the trust of the university, and has put it into the precarious financial position that we inherited it. And I think the second thing that you'll see in the review is that there were conflicts of interest, potentially, I should say, with some of the board members. And as you know, though, we've done a lot to try to address these things since I've been here. And so while the forensic review gives us an opportunity to look back, we don't want to stare, because we want to be focused on the future in terms of making sure the CapRadio is here to stay.
And you talk about the former GM. They talk about, I think it is the person one or something like that in the report.
Yes.
Is that who that is?
So the names are redacted because of an ongoing law enforcement investigation. That being said, I think that most people, at least with that particular individual, can pretty readily determine who it is.
Which leads to my next question. Who should be held accountable, and do you feel a crime was committed?
Well, there's an ongoing law enforcement investigation, so I think that tells you what our perspective is, as well as that of those who are in law enforcement. I do think that there's a number of people who led to this situation. Fortunately, we've had a turnover in the board, we've had a turnover in leadership at Capitol Public Radio. We're in a position where now I feel like we're moving forward in the right way. When we inherited Capitol Public Radio, it was a sinking ship. And a lot of people told us, people come up to me in the community all the time saying, Luke, you should abandon that thing. Why are you trying to save it? And I think what most people don't understand is it is core part of our educational mission, right? So we educate students here on all kinds of different topics in philosophy and sociology and criminal justice, political science, and then we educate the public through Capitol Public Radio. But how this occurred really is this. The campus has always tried to allow there to be a journalistic firewall between the campus and Capitol Public Radio. Why? Because that's important for journalistic independence and the integrity of what's being shared through the news. I think what happened is that over time, that desire to provide that flexibility was taken further and further and further, and the two organizations grew apart, even though they are an auxiliary of Sacramento State. And then we find ourselves in a position where the trust that was provided was violated.
Well, that really is, I think, what this boils down to, right? Because I think folks look at this and they say, how does something like this happen? Where was the oversight?
Yeah. Well, remember that Capitol Public Radio had many, many years of a clear external audit that they had been conducting, right? That they had a third-party group that was giving them a clean bill of health every year. So this also tells you that in order for this to be done, the level of financial adeptness that needed to be in place in order for the person who was doing this to be able to benefit in the way that they did. And so, again, that creates the situation that we see. I think they see then a lack of oversight from the campus. We see that the campus needs to have a stronger relationship with us auxiliaries. And so there's a lot of things that we've done to try to address that. So before, the auxiliaries did not meet together with the finance team on a regular basis to determine what are they doing? Are they doing it right? Are they following our policies and protocols? And so one of the things I did when I came into this role is we created a council. So now they're doing that on a regular basis with all of our auxiliaries because we don't want to have something like this occur again. We brought in their financials to the campus. So now the campus is managing the financials of Capitol Public Radio. And one of the benefits of that is it actually helps us to address many of the issues that came out in the audit. In addition to that, we've also been working on their educational mission. One of the things that came out in the audit, it said that students weren't getting internships and having opportunities to learn about journalism. Like that's literally one of the main reasons they exist, and it wasn't happening. And so now we're moving that forward in a different direction. So between that and all the efforts to bring in high quality leadership with the interim GM, Tom Carlo, and now with Frank there, we've had a great set of leaders who have given their heart, sweat, and tears to make it so that Capitol Public Radio can be in a good position. And it's paying dividends. Our membership is up, fundraising is up, listenership is up, and our contracts that allow us to continue doing the programming that we're doing have been extended. So all that has taken place. Now, we've only been here for a year, but all that's taken place. And so now it's really thinking about how do we manage this sizable long-term debt that was accumulated through through financial mismanagement and potentially crimes.
Talk to me about this. Members of the Capitol Public Radio Endowment Board have been quoted as saying, Sac State's core mission is educating students, not running radio stations. Your response?
Well, I know that the Endowment Board was not pleased with the findings of the CSU audit. And the audit was critical of the relationship between the endowment and the campus. We have met with them and asked them to come internal to the campus and be part of our endowment board, and those conversations remain ongoing.
So to be clear, CapRadio is a priority for Sac State.
Capitol Public Radio is a high priority for Sacramento State. We didn't put all this work in it to see it go away. We put this work in it to make sure that it would be here to stay.
Talk to me about your initial impressions after having seen this review. Surprised, upset? What did you think? What did you feel?
So I would say that I was disappointed and saddened because, if you think about the people who donate to Capitol Public Radio, a large subset of our donors are people who are older, on fixed incomes, and are really just trying to make sure that public radio is here to stay. And to see people who are in positions of authority and positions of trust violate that trust for personal gain, I think that's sad. And that's why we've taken it so seriously in terms of trying to put it back on the right track. And I would say that, one of the things that has occurred over this time frame is, when I first heard about Capitol Public Radio is right after I was selected as president of Sac State. And so, hey, we want to brief you and give you a up to date on what's going on with this auxiliary. It seems to be having some issues. And I was told, oh yeah, don't worry, it's going to be fixed before you get here. And I think that's where people thought the problem was. And then it just, as we took over, kept on turning over each leaf, we would find more and more and more. And that's actually also what happened with the forensic review. The forensic review was supposed to be released in January or February. We're in August. So what happened? Well, what happened is we just kept on uncovering more and more and more and more as they were going along. And then, of course, we got the final review last week, the final copy. And so, in the spirit of transparency and ensuring the public that they can trust the future direction, we released it.
I know CapRadio laid off about 12% of staff and canceled music programs just 1 month before that audit revealed the financial mismanagement. What do you say to staff and the people who keep this thing going every day when they see this thing?
You know, for the staff, I'm very proud of them. They have worked under very extreme conditions given the scrutiny that's taken place with Capital Public Radio. And if you listen to the product of what's on the air right now, Capital Public Radio has never sounded as good as it sounds right now. So I think we have a lot to thank our staff for to bringing it to that place. And at the same time, it's been hard because our current staff that's there had to see other staff members who are no longer now part of the organization because we had to right size the budget. But now that the budget is right sized, now that we have listenership up, membership up, donations up, now that we have the contracts extended, we're in a strong position where I can say something now that I couldn't say before, and that is Capital Public Radio is here to stay. Now we got the long-term debt. We have to figure out how we're going to manage and work with them to do that. But in terms of the organization, it should actually, based upon the projections that we've seen, it should actually finish with some actual revenue this year.
And that's saying something, right? Given what we've.
I think it's saying a lot. I have a lot to, in terms of a lot of people to thank, in particular Mark Willer, who is the chairman of the board for CapRadio, Tom Carlo, who served as the interim GM, and our current GM, Frank, who is just doing amazing work.
Some might say a big part of this stems from the planned move to downtown, right? With the new headquarters and the live venue. That was called off, I think, earlier this year. Where do things stand with those projects?
So in terms of whether or not we are moving forward with downtown, that's yet to be determined. I can tell you right now, Capital Public Radio has no possible way to pay for that. And as people will see within the forensic review, there's some concerns that have been raised in terms of how those agreements were made.
And to drill back down, one of the things that you said, you talked about this may have been done for personal gain and things of that nature, and that possible crimes were committed. Just be as real as you can be with the public watching this. What happened?
What happened is that there was a lack of financial controls, and one person had the ability to sign things without there being any counterbalance within the organization, and that person used that position and that unique setup to be able to personally benefit from Capital Public Radio.
Well, what we're getting at here is when you say personal gain, there were things that were egregious, I guess.
Yes, they were things that were absolutely egregious that involved signing authority and that involved the use of an Amex card.
Talk to me about that, because I know that the amount of money that we were talking here, anywhere from $400,000 to almost $800,000.
Yeah, I mean, from what the review can highlight, and that, again, you have to have evidence to be able to support these things, right? So the review is very conservative and cautious. It's around $850,000 that the review points to. That being said, from other patterns that we have seen, we assume that it's far more than that, but that's just what can be substantiated through the review.
And this is money that was used for to enrich himself?
For personal benefit and for personal gain for one individual, for travel, for purchases, and for other benefits.
And I think you did speak to this when you talked about the members and the types of folks who give. But I want you to have an opportunity to address that, given what we know, right? Given hundreds of thousands of dollars. What would you say to folks?
I would say that they are right to be angry and disappointed. There's been a lot of anger and disappointment in the community, and I hear it regularly, almost every single day when I'm talking with folks. And I also think that hopefully seeing this, they realize that it was not a widespread thing, but a small group of actors that led to this situation. And I think the other thing that I hope that they take away is that Capital Public Radio is in good hands and is here to stay.
Which, like you said, that was not even a few months ago was something that was being said, right?
Yeah.
Should someone go to jail?
If law enforcement can substantiate what we've seen in the forensic review, I would absolutely think that's the right course of action here.
Which would be?
That someone should be facing jail time. I mean, if you think about the level of egregiousness and what happened here, this isn't just a simple mistake. This isn't people, oh, I didn't realize I could do this or I couldn't spend something like that. No, this, from my perspective, personal perspective, as someone who's not in law enforcement, is incredibly intentional.
Uh, and so we hear the frustration in your voice, because it makes that state look bad, right? It
Yeah.
makes people say, "My goodness," people,
Yeah.
are there other places where, people are doing this type of thing? You're saying no. You're saying you put in place things to make sure that something like this never happens again.
Yes. That and again, so the auxiliaries are all, and we have 5 auxiliaries at Sacramento State. They're all independent nonprofit organizations that report up through the campus, but also have their own independent boards. Ultimately, the president and vice president of finance are the responsible stewards in terms of financially for these organizations. That's in state code. And so, obviously, as president, I want to make sure that all of our auxiliaries are being supported in the way that they need to do good work, to not make the campus look bad, and to ultimately help to improve the lives of our students or of our community.
You talked about the students. I know CapRadio's student internship program, it was suspended, I think, like during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, and then it never got brought back.
Will that come back?
100%. We're working on that right now, actually.
And so, as we look at this, I'm hearing you say you've been able to kind of uncover some very concerning things, that a law enforcement investigation is ongoing. Speak to your role in that investigation. You're cooperating, I would assume.
Yeah. The campus is cooperating. We're providing them with documentation. Everything that we receive, we're passing on to them. And we have a vested interest in wanting to see the right outcome take place and for justice to be served.
And that's what this has come to, right? This is about getting justice for people in this case.
Yeah, I think that that's certainly a part of it. And also for sending the message to other people within our community that when people violate the public trust for personal benefit, that there's a response, there's an outcome for that. And that we hold people accountable, and that we don't push, sweep things under the rug, and we don't look the other way. We have to look into what is difficult and dark sometimes in order to get to the point where we see light.
I have to tell you, if we're just being honest, I mean, this place, CapRadio has had several general managers, who've come. Is there a way that you can help us hone in on who this person might be? Because quite frankly, you don't want to malign people who came afterwards, or suggest that they did anything wrong.
Yeah. Well, what I can say is that because of the ongoing law enforcement investigation, you'll notice that the report that was released has names redacted. I think it's pretty obvious who many of these individuals are, but it's really important for us to support that investigation and the integrity of what's taking place. We, again, have a vested interest in making sure that justice is served.
How soon have you been in any contact with law enforcement? Do you know how soon that investigation might wind its way down, or how soon would you expect to see some movement there?
I know that they've been working on it, but I would defer to the district attorney and the sheriff's office for that.
And I'm assuming that you're planning to share this forensic exam with them. Is that part of the investigation?
Yes, so we have shared it with them, and we've shared an unredacted version.
Okay.
With all the full appendices that go along with it with evidence.
Okay, so let me just have you state that as what you have done. You have shared what with who?
We have shared an unredacted version of the report with law enforcement.
Anything else that I have not asked you that you want to make sure that people don't take anything else away from this conversation?
Yeah, I think that the question that I get often and is tangentially related to this whole situation is Capital Public Radio and KVI emerging? And I think that question comes up because the perception that Capital Public Radio maybe wasn't as financially stable. And I would say that we have no intention of having Capital Public Radio move on to another sponsoring organization. That being said, if KVIE wanted to become part of our umbrella, we would certainly support them in doing that.
I know that there have been some conversations around that, which is kind of where I got with the endowment board and
Yeah.
things of that nature. But you're saying that you believe that CapRadio is sound and that
Yes.
there is no need for mergers or things of that nature.
It's sound. There's no need for mergers. That being said, we're open to partnering. We're open to an alliance. We believe that public media should all be working together. They're all in the same sandbox. They should be playing together. And if that means that, again, KVIE would want to be part of that umbrella, we would certainly support them in doing that. But my impression is that they also want to remain independent, and we support whatever they want to see and whatever is going to produce the best possible outcome for public media.
I think when people have a chance to review the report, the breadth of the report, um, it should send the signal, like you said, that you were focused on being as transparent as possible given the nature of the investigation, right?
Yes, I think that that's what it's going to do, and that was our intention from the very beginning, is be transparent, let folks know what we're doing. And I don't know if that's always what has occurred in Sacramento, just in general, right? I think that what we did was we showed the pattern that should be followed by any public organization when it comes into a crisis.
And you say that this has been a crisis.
This has been an absolutely existential crisis for the campus.